Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate your patience.
No, hey,
This far getting started.
as a non-techie guy, I totally get it for myself. So
Well, John, I appreciate you being here. For the people listening this morning, who are you? What do you do? Kind of give us some color to your background here.
yeah, no, it's a interesting question, right? Because I think we all come from different backgrounds. It was really cool to break some bread with you for lunch the other day and learn coming from Texas and all the things that you've done and all those good things. I'm an entrepreneur by heart, and that's what I put on my LinkedIn, entrepreneur heart. And then I'm a commercial banker by trade right now. So I've had three careers per se, right? I've been in the telecom business. Yesterday, I met a couple of guys that we were having lunch, and it was so funny because we all of a sudden reminisce. Wait, you were in telecom? You were selling long distance service? Like that's not even a thing anymore. Yeah. And so those types of things came up. So I've been in telecom, in the automotive business on my own, which was my exit of a company that I was able to sell called the AutoGenie.com. And then from that, I transitioned into finance. So it's been three different careers. At times, you look at the people that have been very successful in their life and you feel like, man, did I make a mistake? Should I have stayed in one field? But I feel like, God puts us in different areas of life, and I'm at where I'm at. I need to be where I need to be, and, good to go from now.
So looking at the prior two careers, how would you say that has shaped your current role, working with young entrepreneurs or business owners and, on the lending side of things, how do those experiences kind of shape where you're at today?
Yeah, so I think both of them. So the telecom business was a B2B service, so selling long distance, local line service for small businesses. So that was kind of my first in to talk to business owners, right? And what is important to them, the bottom line, right? And where are they spending money on their balance sheet, right? And what debts do they have, or what services are they paying for? So that kind of groomed that piece of the puzzle. The automotive was more of a personal side of things, but it still dealt with professional women, was kind of the target market. And that led into now the finance side, dealing with numbers. And I think people either are right brain or left brain, right? Sometimes it's neat to find someone that has maybe a mix of both. But being a finance guy, we just had some tech issues, right? And I could never solve that. But a number, a strategy behind it, and the things that the 25 years of those prior, learnings has really helped me to become, I think, a great banker. And that's kind of my differentiator is when I say I'm a business banker, commercial banker, I try to say, hey, look, I've also owned a business. So when I talk to a business owner, that's one of my first 7-second elevator pitch part of the story is that I've been where you're at. I've been able to do some good things. So I understand the team. That's probably a priority when you become a business owner. So
Some of the hardships and challenges that they face.
Yeah.
So you obviously work with, a deep bench of business owners from, small to large size companies. What, is there a common theme, I guess, in challenges that these guys face, that's regardless of industry or kind of focus?
Yeah. I mean, you take, scaling your business, starting a business, finance, marketing, all those types of things, branding your business, right? All that type of stuff. I think common theme in my podcast, so I've had a chance to interview a lot of CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, and obviously do business with them as well. I think there's a common theme of the grit of being able to either get through the things that they need to, and that first $100,000 in sales of any business, could be a widget, it could be a service, right? I think that's on the business owner that founded the company. After that, you start to see what are the systems they've put in place. What's the customer journey like? What are they evaluating? And to get from 6 figures to 7 figures is no easy task. I think the number last I checked on Google was like 7% of companies in America make it to 7 figures, to 1 million in sales. Yeah, so it's a small percentage, and there's people setting up their LLCs and incorporations every day. So, and that's actually boomed since the pandemic. So ironically enough, it's still a big challenge to get to 7 figures, yet there's trillions of dollars in the marketplace right now flowing around. So
if you're an entrepreneur, business owner, and you've taken that startup journey, there's obviously going to be challenges, and I think that's part of the journey is overcoming that. But what are some resources or what do you coach people up on to, how do you overcome those challenges?
Yeah.
In the most time and cost effective way possible.
Yeah. Great question. I think for me, and I promote this even when I do posts in LinkedIn or my YouTube channel, or as a banker, I say, hey, the essential team, and certainly commercial real estate is part of that for sure, because that's a piece of the puzzle. But I think the core, if a business owner, founder, CEO of a company can have a great banker, right, which I'm tooting my own horn there, hopefully they have a good banker, a great CPA, and a great attorney. So I think that covers that initial step of how you go into a marketplace. Obviously, you've got your branding, your marketing people, you've got your, finance people, all that type of stuff. And you have to strategize in what your specific business is. But I think if you start with that core, and those that can start with that nucleus first, I've seen a ton more success for those people because it's a team and they're not trying to do everything on their own.
Yeah. So do you see a lot of individuals that are taking that journey, or, guys that maybe have a partnership and they want to try and go that journey together? What are some of the challenges in the partnership piece, and how do you maintain that friendship and that vision when at times, and especially in a startup where stakes and cash flow can be high and limited, how do you kind of balance those relationships and, kind of the personal aspect of the business?
Well, you hit a key component there, right? The personal. It's, I'm a father of 3 girls right now, about to be in their teens, so pray for me. Married 15 years. And I feel like, a partnership especially is like a marriage, right? You come with your own ideas and your own values, your own sets of principles, and how you feel like your work ethic is and all that stuff. And hopefully it's a great mesh, right? Essentially, if you can have one that's really, kind of operations driven and one that's sales driven, it's kind of a cool mix. I have a paving company that I know. The CEO is very sales, kind of VP of sales, and drives the marketing piece. And then his partner is very operations driven. So he kind of keeps him in check, right? The sales will get you in the lights, but the operations will deter the business if you're not doing it right? Yeah. So I think really it's that combination in a partnership. Obviously, from my experience at the AutoGenie, was the only one that I had a partnership per se that I started a company with. I can remember the days of, those first 60, 90, 120, 12 months of figuring out, like, is it fair I'm doing all this work, or is it fair that he's doing all this work? So those types of things come up. But hopefully communication and compromise and the ability to stick to some values and some principles of how you're going to work, helps a lot. So
in these conversations with these CEOs over the past few years, what are some of the biggest keys that you've kind of seen in terms of, maybe similar traits or similar mindsets that, really differentiate these guys from, all the others to being in that 7% of businesses that are really thriving and hitting that 7-figure mark?
Yeah. I think, as I shared, from one thing I've learned, at least, the first 100,000 is kind of on you, right? So you should always be able to, as a founder, get your company to 100,000 in sales based on your own effort. 100%. Yeah. So that after that, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million, you need some processes and some ways to do things, or else you're going to be so scattered, you lose opportunities, right? In our day-to-day, right? I mean, if we don't have some processes kind of built in, we lose opportunities, just because our centers of influence may send a deal, and if we aren't tracking it the right way and we're not following up the right way, that could be loss of revenue and opportunity.
Right. So when you're coaching or consulting a group that has engaged with you, is that kind of what that looks like? They've proven the concept, they've hit that milestone, but now it's, we're growing so much, but how do we handle this? How do we manage it? Is that part of your process, is building those processes and kind of helping on the operational side?
Yeah. I mean, again, if there's some great systems out there, right? Monday.com, EOS, right? There's some other things that are tools out there. ChatGPT is becoming a big deal, right? With AI and all that type of stuff. There's so many data sets out there that can share by you putting into something and giving you a framework. It's kind of neat to have those tools now, and it's a lot faster, so that if you're building something, and let's just say you've reached 150,000 in sales, but now you need to bring on a new salesperson. And what does that job detail look like? What are the day-to-day processes, right? If you've hopefully mastered some of that yourself, you can then duplicate that, right? It's called train the trainer in many cases, right? So, but to answer your question, as far as what I've seen that have helped people succeed, is those things. Is as soon as you cross that $100,000 barrier, it's about making sure that while that journey got you to 100,000, now you're setting up the processes to be able to grow, and that way you can implement 2 or 3 new salespersons coming in. You can implement maybe 1 or 2 VAs, virtual assistants, or even local assistants, because once you start to have scalability, that's where you start to test the muscles of where your processes are, how are you moving things, what's the client journey like, and those types of things really start to get tested.
So talking about like ChatGPT, things like that, post-COVID, the world seems very different. So, and you have all these new tools, and interest rates are high. It seems like a totally different environment. So, do you think that really plays a huge impact? Is it mostly just kind of noise in the background, but, the tried and true of, history will kind of run its course? I guess, are things the same as they've been, or is it totally different for somebody starting up today?
I think they're the same in principles. So, many books out there. I think one that I referenced to change the game of industries is called Blue Ocean Strategy. Great book on what is everybody doing and what can you do in your industry, right? I mean, you're a great example, at least from what I know of you. You've set yourself apart within a commercial real estate business to be a very specific area that you have loved and enjoyed being in and working with the clients that you work with in the healthcare space. So I think it's about creating today that blue ocean strategy. Because if you're going to align yourself in an industry where you're going to do what everybody else does, you're going to take market share. You're going to have the ability to get some clients because of your background, your personality, the way you enter the market, your tenaciousness, your work ethic, all that type of stuff. But there is something to being a little bit different. So as a banker, right, as an example, I shared off camera that I tell a business owner up front, look, I've owned a business. I'm not just a pencil pusher, right? I got my degree in finance and I'm a banker. And nothing wrong with that. But I try to be distinct and in the way that I approach things, so that when I talk to a business owner, I'm talking about what's their strategy here? How do they develop that? What's the client journey, look like? What are they thinking for, if they're a little bit older business owner and they've been 20, 30 years, what's their exit strategy, right? Have they thought about, owning versus renting, right? If they're leasing right now, is it more advantageous? Can I work with a commercial real estate, partner to say, hey, for now, the numbers mean that you continue to lease, but 3 years from now, we think that the interest rates will come down, what you're paying here, then you'll be able to grow some equity in your own place, as an example.
So a lot of people can start a business. So I work with a lot of doctors in healthcare, so they can start their practice, they can make a living, they can be average. But, it seems like they leave a lot of money on the table. They don't really reach their full potential. So, they can be great clinicians, but maybe don't understand some of those levers that can be pulled to really kind of elevate them to that next step. So for a new doctor that's maybe starting a practice, what are some of those things from having a very heavy business background, some kind of wisdom or tips that you would suggest to kind of go beyond just opening your doors and start seeing patients? What can really help you on the business side that maybe you haven't thought of?
Again, great questions. For me, it would be allowing them to know the market they're about to hit. In the dental practice world, in the veterinarian world, in the MD world, in the orthopedic or optometrist world, what market are you about to serve? So doing some research, which I know you're really good at. I was impressed by the research that you do to even approach a client initially. So doing the research that if you're going to open up on Route 59 in Naperville, what's the demographics like? Who are you looking to serve? Are you pediatrics? Are you in orthodontics? Are you, et cetera? And evaluating the marketplace so that when you say you open up an office in X place and the potential is 5, 10, 15 miles away, what is that circle of potential business to come into you? Secondly would be the first three that I talked about. What attorney do you have to make sure that you and your liabilities are kind of looked at the right way? The risk management, the insurances, things that the attorney and maybe a risk management professional will set up the right way. Your CPA, encourage your CPA. I think if you have a great CPA, it's the one that encourages you to set yourself up right with the way that you're going to handle your taxes, your payroll, the things that are important to be able to manage your business from a day-to-day operations. This has been said, quadrillion million times, right? There's people that work in the business and people that work on the business. A clinician, a person that loves to be able to do what they, got that degree for, they're working in the business. And that's where the odds end is sometimes they don't know how to work on the business, right? So still a great team, obviously depending on the financing, the resources that they have to start the business, the burn rate that they have on that money, right, up front, right? If they're marketing, they're hiring, they're leasing, there's some money that needs to be spent. Yeah. So if you have $500,000 or $300,000 or a loan for $1 million, how far can that get you? So those 2 or 3 or 4 points, hopefully, that I just shared will help someone to concentrate on, okay, here's how I want to deploy into this market, and here's how I want to use my money to better, grow my business quickly. So
no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, really, yeah, understanding where you're going, and how who's the server, who are you serving? What is your why? Where are you going? Having some sort of plan. So when they're starting the business, working on finance, you talked about burn rate, so maybe a line of credit, things like that. Mm-hmm. What are some insider tips in the banking world for somebody that's not really familiar with, what goes into that? What is treasury management? What is a line of credit? And, your acquisition loan for real estate or a practice, if you're acquiring a practice, how do all those things fit together? Outside of just, okay, I'm going to work with this bank. This is my banker. What is that banker doing for you? How does all that work for your business? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so that's another important part. A lot of times we think we see a bank, I won't name any names, but there's one on the corner. It's 3 minutes from my office. I'm going to bank with them. Unfortunately, what you may not get is the true business banker relationship, right? A lot of times you go to a retail branch and great people. I was in retail. In fact, this building downstairs is one that I managed. But it's rare that you find a true business banking relationship at a retail branch. Hopefully that retail branch is wise enough to bring in their business banking partner. And even if you're just starting out, it's about transitioning. Let's just say you just want to open up an account. know that treasury management, which you brought up, is key to your accounts receivables. Are you collecting credit cards? Are you taking checks? Are you collecting cash? How are you handling the cash? What's the safety to your employees? Are they having to drive 3 minutes or walk across the street, deposit things? Can they do it remotely? Do they have an app for it? So that's treasury management, right? The ins and outs, your AR, your AP, and how are you wanting to do that transactional side of your business, and give your clients many different ways to pay you. The worst thing is, back in the 80s and 70s and 60s, probably is like check or cash. That's it, right? And I remember the days in the 90s when I was in the marketplace, and you heard of credit card processing, and people didn't want to do it. It was really interesting. Well, they're taking 3-4%. That 3 or 4%, if you can convert that into taking your cash today and depositing it into your bank account instead of waiting on a mailed out invoice with a check that mails back and takes 7 to 12 business days, the ability to have that cash in your hands today with either interest rate opportunities on your savings, especially nowadays, or the ability to deploy that capital to then market your business so that more business comes in. That's how you start to see strategically treasury management, right? Lines of credit, there's different facilities of how lines of credit, get approved. First of all, making sure that you go into a business, taking care of your personal credit score. That can be vital initially, right? If you don't have a strong credit score, please, make sure you work with someone that is in that credit repair industry side of things, or can work with you that are, mortgage people and those types of things that can help you and give you some tips.
So if you're graduating college, your plans to open a practice, maybe as soon as you finish, you're obviously going to have some student loans attached. But, maybe depending on your priorities and your goal, if it's to open a practice, maybe don't go buy that new car just yet. Maybe wait to buy the house until after you're started up for a couple of years. Because I'm sure all that factors into your credit score, right? And your personal debt load going in.
Yeah. So the number one thing would be to save money, right? Especially at the beginning. Get that job, work for someone. Hopefully you work for someone that you could learn from. And then, eventually if you have that desire to be an entrepreneur and start your own practice, then you have that. But you're completely correct. Your credit score, your savings amount, and then obviously the ability to stay low on your own debt load, because personal debt load, when you're buying a business or buying a practice or setting up your own new location to lease or to buy a building, we judge it based on what the potential business revenue is going to be and the net income. So that's called debt service ratio, based on what your actual profitability is compared to the loan amount and what you have to service. So debt service. But then there's global debt service, right? A lot of people were like, well, my business does great. And they're hemorrhaging because they bought 3 Range Rovers. They've got $1.5 million home. And I see that a lot, unfortunately, right? The business is doing great. But when we look at it from a global perspective, a personal guarantee is a big deal for a bank, because if your business goes down, maybe we don't have the SBA side that's protecting us to a certain percentage. We also are going to, as maybe a third or a fourth option, look at you personally. And when you personally guarantee, if you come into the relationship pretty weak because you've over leveraged yourself with $1 million home and big cars and stuff, that can be a problem. So fixate on the thing that's most important to you. What's important to you? Is it building the business or looking flashy up front? Is it long-term wealth, or is it impressing someone right away, right? So it's the added, old age adage of where are your principles, where are your priorities, all that type of thing.
You touched on a point about working or being under somebody that you can learn from. How important do you think it is starting out to have a good mentor?
Huge. I'll selfishly plug my book. I'm coming out with a book called Go for CEO. I've totally done the title here, but becoming the CEO of your own life. And the 3rd chapter talks about that process, right? I've been lucky. I'm an only child. Never did finish college, but I've had great mentors in my life. And I think there's a revolution going on right now with education, right? Because when you could put yourself in a situation, if you work hard enough and are lucky enough to do some due diligence, find some successful people and be a part of that journey with them, be a part of a value to them. Those who have made it, or quote unquote made it in our view, you would be highly surprised at how many people want to give back, right? Success is not a singular thing. It's a group thing. It's a team thing. It's a, process thing, right? So it's interesting if you're a younger, in this case, in the medical field or healthcare field, if you could be under someone that you see and can visually see the practice is strong, it's multi-layered, it's got great people around it, and can be a part of that story first, that'll give you a huge leg up as to when you should be able to start your own thing.
Yeah. So providing value, if you're a new graduate or something like that, I mean, how do you make that connection? Maybe you can identify who a good mentor would be, but then how do you make that leap of engaging them and kind of making that pitch to kind of align yourself with it?
Yeah. So one of the things I did, and I just, it was by happenstance and also by some luck, right? I would look for people that were successful, like in telecom. I had a gentleman that mentored me in that space, had about 12 Nextel retail stores with service areas and stuff. And I had pitched him trying to sell him something before I actually got to know him, right? And once I came back and stayed on that building of the relationship, I asked, what can I do for them? So as an example, this guy had a location on North Avenue in Villa Park, I believe. And I remember going in there to sell him something that was totally unrelated. But when I got wind of this telecommunication and I got my own Nextel, I went back to him and said, hey, remember me? I was the guy that, tried to sell you this, that, whatever. Can I take you out to lunch, right? What can I do to help you? What are some things that are going on that are challenges that maybe I know someone that can help you, right? So try to add value. And in some ways, almost, it may not be the perfect timing for this, but working for free, meaning like willing to say, hey, Zane, you're awesome at this healthcare real estate space. Can I do anything to help you with your next deal, right? If I'm a junior guy here at Caton, I'm like looking at you going, dude, the next deal that you're in, can I just be a fly on the wall? Can I grab your coffee? Like in a sense, right? And just learn what are things that you're doing. Because I think a lot of times, again, the will of the human being, maybe I just look at it in a favorable way. When you're successful at any amount of level, I think you're always having a heart to give back. So I think we scare ourselves more than the person that is willing to mentor you is scared of being asked, right? So I think it's on us to pursue that more than them.
Yeah. So kind of touching on that a little bit, adding value, but on the flip side now. So you've kind of made that transition. You're the business owner, and now you're there to serve, whether it's a client or somebody that's going to use your product. Especially in the healthcare field, you think, oh, you're just doing procedures, but it's to an extent a sales role as well. You're having to pitch yourself amongst all the other dentists or all the other vets out there. So what are some ways, when you're in not really a traditional sales role, how do you still kind of make that pitch to, what are some, I guess, mindsets or things to be aware of does that kind of make sense?
Oh, yeah. And I'll give an example. I mean, our pediatric dentist is down the road here on Ogden, and they just had a grand opening because they refurbished a building and had their new place, and they were downtown Naperville and they moved out here to Ogden. And it's interesting, they had a food truck, a taco food truck. They invited all their current clients that they had built up at the previous location they were just leasing. And as an example, they moved far enough that I think, what probably was a little bit of an impact on some of the client base. but what can you do to market yourself, right? And that's kind of where the yin yang of marketing and sales comes in. If I had a marketing person to my right and a salesperson only to my left, they'd probably be like, no, the marketing's more important than sales, right? So, but branding, I mean, look at you guys, like Kate and commercial, right? And I've seen you on podcasts that you do here and the things that you do. I think, it still comes down to the day-to-day efforts of your personal network, investing in those people, breaking bread with those people, making time for those people, and sharing what you're doing. There's another gentleman that is a father of a friend of one of my little ones, and he opened up his dentist office about 3 blocks from the one I was just talking about. So how is he going to differentiate himself, right? And it's his branding, his marketing. He happens to be Asian, so maybe there's an Asian market that he can attract himself to that's, a little bit, and he's got a couple specialties that he's a little bit different than the pediatric one. So I think it's the blending of marketing and sales, but you have to own it as the owner up front, right? Again, I'll go to that same thing, is the first 100,000 in business is your responsibility. So you want to be a business owner, you gotta buck up.
So at the end of the day, you are just an individual. And so, there's going to be other people in your sphere, on your team, interacting with these patients, with these clients. Managing people is probably, I think a lot of people would argue, the hardest part. So and a lot of people talk about culture and, all these buzzwords, but how do you really build that? How do you create a team around yourself that you can trust? Mm-hmm. They're confident, they're kind of fulfilling that vision. How do you support them so they're motivated to do that? Not just in the short term, but the long term. How do you build that team and keep it together, which is probably a whole separate challenge.
That's probably a whole different podcast too, right? So I guess as a synopsis, like the most people that I ever had under me was 12. So in my own business, 12. When I was a branch manager, 7. And I'm just going to talk from my own perspective. There's a million YouTube channels probably that can go deeper on this, but I think for me, it's always been be the example that you want your people to emulate. So train the trainer is another one, meaning, most people don't know what they don't know. If they knew, they'd do. Yeah. But if they don't do, they don't actually know. Yeah. So you follow me on that one? Like it's a guy told me that one time. He's like, hey, you don't know, John. I'm like, no, I know how to do this. And he's like, no, you don't know. He's like, because if you knew, you'd do. And since you don't know, you don't actually do. So get to knowing. Right? So I mean, that's kind of the neat part is, culture. But what does culture really mean? Like, do you actually care? Like, the one that I just shared, this pediatric and orthodontist, dude, it was like the families were there with their kids. Like my wife and I took all 3 of our girls that happened to go to them, but man, we felt the energy. The main guy, great guy, super big smile, hugging moms, big bro hugs to dads. Thank you for coming here. The whole staff, every one of them smiling, taking pictures, engaging with customers. And it was a customer appreciation day, but you could see, like, it's not fake that 100%. Yeah. And it's, I remember my wife, there was a challenging time because it's a husband and wife that run the practice. And my wife made a little, like baby onesie because they had their first kid, and there was some health things that going on. And it was interesting. She drove out all the way to Inverness to deliver this little onesie that she had made on her printer and stuff like that. But they accepted that, and then not only that, acknowledged it, and it's like a friendship now, right? Like a family type thing. So look, you can't do that in everything, I guess, but just making the time, culture, all these things that I think all of us really probably know instinctively, but we don't make the time to do it. And if it's not in your schedule, almost like you have to put it in an agenda, sometimes you forget to do it. So
Is that a tip, I guess, in there that scheduling it out to be mindful?
yeah. And look, I can be very bad at that because I'm the guy that's probably, like I said, only child, distracted, probably a little ADHD at sometimes, and I'll throw a ton on the wall and see what sticks at times. But also, I've learned that if it's not in my schedule, if I didn't write it down, if I don't have a consistent way of tracking things, things fall to the wayside, right? And oh, geez, I got a $3 million deal I should be paying attention to, right? As an example, or $200,000 or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean that's a big deal, and don't be afraid to, as a new business owner, to spend money too as well. I think a lot of small businesses, why they don't actually get to $1 million, a component of it is that they're not willing to spend the money because they want to be making the money up front.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, I'm a business owner. I should be driving a Mercedes, and I should have a big house, and my watch should be a Rolex. All those things, and not everybody's like that, but what I also see is they're not willing to give up a bit of control, and that's how you 100% stay small. When you want to control everything, you are guaranteeing yourself to stay small as a business because you're not willing to empower people, which is part of culture, to make mistakes, to be able to do something. And if they did it wrong, course correct and watch that person be enlightened and encouraged. And now, bam, now they're going to work their butt off to do it right the next time. So I think that's a big deal.
Interesting. Well, John, I appreciate you coming today. Any insight on when the book might be available?
It's putting the pressure on me. I just talked to the publisher actually this morning. We're probably 3 to 6 months away right now. Okay. I've got about 17,000 words. She wants me to be at 30 plus thousand. So, yeah. So a little bit more to go. And hopefully what it is like anything else, right? As I've grown older, my relationships mean even more, right? My time with my kids mean more. My time on earth is less and less, right? So what I want to do with that book is leave my little imprint on the world. That's my way of kind of leaving something behind. The YouTube channel that I'm building with Go for CEO. And
I was going to ask, so in the interim, while we're waiting on the book, how can people find you?
Yeah, so JOHN, so John at Go for CEO, so GO, the number 4, and then CEO, goforceo.com if you want to be on the podcast and other things that we do. And obviously as a banker, I'm on LinkedIn, so if you look up John, P as in Paul, and then Andrade, Andrade, so John Andrade on LinkedIn. I'd love to interact and just, this is a passion for me. I could do this 12 hours a day, right? And talk about business, bring people into development. I'll leave it with this. I met a gentleman on a social audio app called Clubhouse. He started a jerky business and he's in Chicago, right? His wife had some health issues and they wanted to find an alternative snack. And it was interesting. On Tuesday, I introduced him to a potential investor because he's up and running. He's gotten into the 7 figures, so he's done well, but he's in that realm of where he needs a little bit of a push either from a debt perspective, so as a banker I could possibly help him, or an investor. And because the YouTube channel has gained enough traction that I am attracting people of all walks and C-suites and CEOs and founders and all this stuff, I made a connection to those two, and I can't tell you how cool it was. This guy's family, the guy that was on my podcast a week and a half ago, turns out that his family owned the biggest meat distributor in the country. And he's talking to my buddy who became a friend through a social audio app who has a jerky snack business. That's pretty cool. That's freaking cool, right? So that, I don't know what'll happen, but worst case scenario, I've connected another person to another person that probably their sphere of influence is way massive, right? And could really help my friend. So I think it's really cool what you're doing here, man. Congrats on all the success and all the things that you're going to do with your podcast. So
yeah, likewise. Well, it was a pleasure to have you, and I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Cool.